The next presentation will be on costing and the costing update from Mary Phelan. So over to you, Mary. Mind the blower,
Hi, I'm Mary Phelan. I'm Management Accountant with the costing section of the HPO. I'm going to give you an update today from a costing angle on what's been going on since our last conference here in Athlone a few years ago, and on how we're playing our part to implement the costing sections of the ABF plan. Brief agenda of what I'm going to go through. I'm going to go through the current costing done within HPO. I'm conscious we have a very diverse audience here today, so some of you are actively working in this area, intimately involved in it, whereas some of you may only be aware of it in passing or not at all. So we're trying to pitch this somewhere in between. With that in mind, I'll give you a background on some of our current costing methodologies and developments in those areas. And I'll also talk to you about the wealth of information available on our training and development webpage and on some future developments in the area. The ABF programme implementation plan, which we've been discussing all day. In the forward, the CEO talks of increasing transparency in funding, encouraging efficiency, value for money and sustainability, and ultimately providing greater accountability for the way our resources are allocated in the healthcare system. Basically proving we're not just throwing it all into a black hole. Costing is a significant element of this, and that's underpinned by its frequent mentions throughout the report. The components of ABF, I think we've seen this a few times today. We can see the second inner circle there is costing. While HPO is part of the National Finance Division, the costing section is different from financial management accounting in that we're probably more interested in the actual activity than we are in the costs, because we need something to attach the costs to create unit costs. The first ABF plan objective, I won't read it, but it's in the plan, and it's to further enhance hospital costing and pricing. To do that, we need to collect detailed costs. At the moment, we're ABFing inpatients and day cases, which we collect costs for, and we also collect some costs for outpatient and emergency care, and as those classifications become more mature, we'll collect more detailed costs from those as well. Within HPO, we have two costing approaches. We have specialty costing and patient-level costing. We collect specialty costs from 42 hospitals. Those costs and services are allocated at specialty level. And we do this through a suite of Excel templates, which anybody here who works on them know they're quite laborious. And they collect a huge amount of detail, mainly through the hospital finance department. We use that in HPO to split the costs into the block and ABF split, so your inpatient day cases, and then on the block side, OPD, ED, and other areas such as geriatric care, non-case mix areas like geriatric care, psychiatry, and there's also the possibility to remove costs that aren't related to the patients in your hospital, such as GP lab tests, and they also provide a mechanism for reporting the external cost allocation between hospitals. And all that work is underpinned by very detailed standards, manuals, training and audits, which we go out to the hospitals. We haven't been out of COVID, but we'll be back out soon. The biggest effect on specialty costing, probably since we last met, was the COVID pandemic and the cyber attack. COVID was a challenging time for all areas, so we were very pleased that the hospitals and groups made the effort to continue returning to us and for their continuing positive engagement with the area. Unfortunately, the ABF method of funding had to revert back to block funding, as was discussed earlier, and this was the case internationally, with countries using various methods of block funding and co-payments, which we did here. Locally, we issued guidance on the COVID costs and how they should be included in the returns, and we're very pleased with the response, and that guidance is available on our webpage, which I'll show you later. The collection of these costs was instrumental in supporting and checking estimates and figures relating to the COVID response in relation to areas such as the lab testing and the private hospital work. Some of the more detailed figures. In the 2022 specialty costing returns, we had 348 million worth of COVID costs, in addition to the normal running costs of the hospitals for the staff in the area to have to allocate. As always, we reconcile the returns back to the audited AFS figures. And the guidance we issued was based on the known variables within the system and on international approaches. We had to take into account the inconsistencies between hospitals and try to balance them out. There was differences in the scale and the profile of costs within hospitals. At the very start of the pandemic, some of the hospitals had gone out and bought their own equipment, their own PPE, and then later these were centrally funded. So the costing guidance recommended that those items that ended up being centrally funded and equipment were taken out, just to level the playing field. The effect of that was 74 million was deducted, and the remaining 274 million was allocated across the services. And in 2021, this figure is actually going to be higher. It's going to be 413 million. The second costing approach we take is patient-level costing. Patient-level costing is collected from 18 hospitals, and while it's not as advanced in the Irish system as specialty costing is, it's arguably a more powerful tool when looking at value and efficiency. It allocates the financial costs and services used to patients and effectively creates a patient bill at the end. HPO have provided the hospitals with a national system. That system is PPM2, and it's provided by Power Health Solutions, which is an Australian company, and it's used widely internationally. It's mainly processed again by the finance person, but it has extensive support from ICT and data analytics. We use it in HPO to set the relativities between DRGs. It can be used to benchmark unit costs across sites, and there's a Power BI tool that Lorna, Fran and Joe developed. And it has huge potential, and again, it's underpinned by very detailed standards, manuals, and detailed reviews. PLC is the only place where all of the elements of data in a hospital are connected. We have the HYPE data is in there, showing the types of patients, their DRG, what DRG their episode of care falls into, the GL, which tells us the expenditure that's been incurred in the hospital and where, and then all the other hospital systems such as radiology, endoscopy, and basically what happened to the patients while they're in the hospital. PLC is a common database, for, as I said, for all the hospital information, and it can be used as a common language for discussions between clinicians and finance, and I think that's what Dr. O'Connor was kind of alluding to earlier. Patient-level costing and developments in the area. We're hoping to expand into more hospitals, and there's been an advertisement recently from more PLC accountants. We have new hospitals in the system in the last few years: Tullamore Regional Hospital, Midlands Regional Hospital in Portlaoise, the Maternity Hospital in Limerick, and Croom Orthopaedic have come in. We do hope to establish 2019 as a baseline year. I know some hospitals are further behind. A lot have 2019 done or are working on it. So for anybody who's fallen behind and wondering where to go, 2019 is the year we'd like to collect. And it should be used by the hospital to support decision making and should help push the agenda of ABF out to the system as the ABF plan looks for. And we're also hoping, I know there's been sometimes when people do PLC, they kind of go, what do I have at the end of it? And we do have the Power BI tool for benchmarking, and there are a lot of reports in the system, but one of the areas we're going to start to look at is a better suite of reports that people can have at the end. Connecting the data. So costing through a PLC has identified a number of data issues. I won't read all of them, but things like patients being found in the theatre file, but we don't find them in the encounter file, so they're not admitted to the hospital, they get no ABF revenue. Patients appearing in service files with high-cost prosthetics, but they're recorded in a DRG that doesn't pay enough for that. High-cost patients not covered by a price tariff, such as the CAR-T therapy. And the HPO is developing a data quality document, the Acute Hospital Costing Activity Data Quality Development Plan, which is a bit of a mouthful. I think the one thing to say about PLC is perfection can be the enemy of good. There's an awful lot of good information in there, and the more information we collect, the more we can do with it. Brian and a few people have touched on this, the various uses of the costing data. You can see an extract there from the ABF plan for St James's and what they use it for. And then there's all the other things that we mentioned throughout the day: ABF, the service plan, COVID costs, system of health accounts, private hospitals, bed days, pathology. HPO earlier in the year went out to the hospitals for a costing and information system survey. And we did this because we wanted to see what hospitals are available for the various services and the data extraction methods and how we can get the information out of those systems to get it into PLC. So we're engaging along with Hype IT with some of the system implementation teams, such as NIMS, Medless, and the National Endoscopy Programme, to try and further enhance the reports that we can get out of the systems and put into PLC. Just before COVID, we had established a data analysts group among the hospitals, and we will resurrect that now that we're supposedly back to normal. One of the key requirements in the ABF plan is education and training at all levels. HPO costing, I think, have always historically provided in-person training to new staff and hopefully been supportive of all staff. We're enhancing this now to a suite of presentations, video standards and manuals that are available at all times on our webpage. And ongoing support is obviously always available. We also hope soon to resurrect the patient costing user group. We held in February, we held a specialty costing seminar for all staff involved in the area, and as I mentioned a minute ago, the data analysts group. This is our costing webpage. Anybody working in the area should have this as a landing page on the browser. And you can see it has a section for each of the areas we work in. So the specialty costing area has all of our manuals, all of our templates for each year. Patient costing has all the files you need for completing your patient level costing, and it also has the general ledger data checker and the activity data checker that Hype IT designed. So also a good section there on costing education, and there's things in there like finance terminology for non-financial managers, costing for beginners, and it's a very useful resource. There's also costing standards, a section on activity-based funding in general, and then the data drop is how people submit the files to us. Some recent additions on the webpage are there's some new standards in there on dialysis, on external costs, on outsourcing. I mentioned the other two. They're at a draft level. I won't go into the detail, but they're on the webpage. The ABF Benchmarking Review Group, one of the objectives of the plan is to set up an ABF Benchmarking Review Group, and Mark O'Connor, our head of costing, is going to set that up in the next few weeks. And that group will be established to adopt a clear and transparent method of communicating with ABF related adjustments, presenting the results in a clear and understandable manner, establishing a mechanism for dealing with unique issues, and for dealing with structural issues affecting the benchmarking process. Another area we've been involved in the last probably year is costing with the IFMS team. We've been engaged with them in relation to the charge of accounts, and more engaged probably on enterprise structure. We've been engaged to an extent the community side and the acute side. Shane has been very involved with the acute side, with engaging with hospitals, ensuring their enterprise structures are fit for purpose as they move into IFMS. There are some hospitals that have one cost centre, and that makes it very, very difficult for the costing person to actually split things out into services and find where they should go in the file. What we reckon, obviously the enterprise structures of the hospitals, sorry, I've forgotten the word. Hospitals are going to be able to pick their own enterprise structure, so what we've done is recommended that some reporting attributes are put into it, and there's 2 of those, and they should help with the real-time reporting on services rather than having to wait for a few years for the HPO to have the data. And also, I suppose our main objective is to aid you in completing your costing. And then our newest piece of work is we're moving into the area of community costing. And that's Objective 4 in the ABF plan, and it's also mandated by Sloan to Care, the HSE service plan, and the corporate plan. Sorry, am I on? Yeah. And the reason we're moving into community costing is to ensure efficient use of resources and support business planning in the area. to have a single national approach to community costing, which will support better cost collection and reporting across all community services, and that's from the ABF plan, and to support and help frame the conversation about moving care to the most appropriate setting, shift left. We hope to establish costing as a primary source of information for value for money, efficiency and quality, and we hope to have clinician and service engagement from the outset. So what we've done so far with community, as I said, it's very much a new piece of work. It's in its infancy. We've established a team within the HPO. Marcella and Edwina have recently joined us, and we're very much at the scoping and discovery stage. The ABF plan has tasked us to look firstly at home care services and older person residential services. So in looking at that, what we've gone so far and done is a documentation review and some review of international perspectives and what's been done internationally. And it's very much at its infancy internationally as well. We've done a detailed stakeholder mapping analysis, and we've spent the last few months going out speaking to key stakeholders, and also assessing the cost and activity that's currently available at a national level. And we've also looked at exploring classification systems such as Intro-AI as potential means of identifying patient resource consumption. Another piece of work we've looked at recently is we've been involved with the North East Regional Integrated Eye Care Service. And that's an interesting piece of work because it's an integrated care pathway. They're looking at the costs from referral from a GP all the way through to your acute episode. And it's been governed by a VACO, which is based in the Mater, and it's Dr. David Keegan that's running it. And it's about moving care to the most appropriate setting, facilitating this move. And we've been supporting that by using HPO data. And that's us. If you want to contact us, I didn't put our details up because that's a GDPR issue, so you can contact us on the webpage. Well, thank you.